Hey guys, Sheephead here with another video from Final Fantasy XIV. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the Sunken Temple of Qarn. It's going to be a video guide. I'm going to be walking you through the bosses. And let's just get started. Now, before we do, I'd like to point out that if you are stuck on a particular boss, you may click the annotations above and skip directly to that boss. So let's do it. So before you go to the instance, you need a quest to go there. And this instance isn't actually on the main storyline, so you need to go pick up this quest on your own. The only thing that you need to be is level 35, and you just need to visit the NPC called Nedrick in Vesper Bay, as you can see here. Once you get there, he will give you the quest, A Brave New Depths, and you follow this, and it will take you to the dungeon entrance, and you'll be able to activate it via the duty finder. Now, once you made it inside the instance, you're going to notice that there's quite a lot of trash. And in these various trash rooms, you're going to see a couple of stone pedestals. As you can see on the screen, at the very top, under the overlay, there is a pedestal called the Helm of Light. Throughout the instance, you're going to run into this one and 3 others, so make sure that you pick them all up and you don't miss any. So, let's get on with the first boss. As you guys can see, it's called Teratotaur. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And this boss is actually relatively hard. Now, this is pretty much the main reason why I made a dungeon guide on this instance, because it is the first instance which is going to, 1, require you to do tactics, and 2, it's going to require you to be actually kind of good at the game. So the first thing that you probably noticed is that there are 3 different gold squares on the floor. Every now and again, the boss is going to cast something called Doom. As you guys can see on the screen, this is the animation for when he starts doing it, and it actually prompts you in the middle of the screen. So when this happens, everyone in the group gets a debuff called Doom, and you have about 5 seconds to get rid of this debuff. And the way that you do that is that you run over to the square which is flashing. As soon as you run over the square, you're going to lose the Doom debuff and you can continue with the fight. However, if you don't get to the square in time, then it's going to one-hit you and it'll kill you straight out. One thing that I would like to point out is that the square can change. So, for example, as you can see on the footage right now, I started running to the one that's flashing, I get to it, I don't lose my Doom debuff, and another one starts flashing, so I have to run back to that one. So just because of this, I think it's a good idea that you probably stay as close to the center of the room as possible, or you save sprint or something like that. But as we know, sprint can drain your TP and stop you doing damage. So the other main ability that the boss has is every so often he is going to spawn 2 ads. As you guys can see on screen, they're called dung wasps, and you need to nuke them down as soon as possible. The reason for this is that when they are up for a certain amount of time, they are going to start to cast a spell called Final Sting. Now, you guys have probably seen this on the trash, probably killed one of your party members, but whatever. So what you need to do is you need to nuke it down as soon as possible, because when Final Sting goes off, it will one-shot the player that it's targeting. The only other way that you can deal with this, if you don't have the high enough DPS, is that you can stun them and you can interrupt the cast. But to be honest, at this point, you should be able to nuke them down. You just need to switch to them as soon as they spawn and get rid of them. So guys, other than that, this boss is pretty simple. It does have some normal attacks like a frontal cone and a big AoE circle. Obviously, you just don't want to stand in those. And I think it's kind of a good idea that the boss is tanked in the middle of the room and everyone's kind of close to that as possible. Now, let's move on to the second boss. So on the way from A to B, from boss 1 to 2, you're going to notice that there's some pretty unique trash in this game. In the name of this floating head, I'm not going to try and pronounce it because it's not going to happen. And what you need to do is if you DPS this down, it's just going to come back to life as soon as it hits 0%. And what you need to do is you need to tank it on the golden squares from the first boss. So as you can see in this room, there's actually 2 of these golden heads. And what we're going to do is we're going to take one of them. We're going to get the tank to tank it onto the golden square. We're going to nuke it down there. Now, when you kill it on here, it's not going to revive. One thing that I'd also like to say is that they do have a frontal cone. So it's a pretty good idea that no one other than the tank stands on the gold square. The second boss of the instance is called the Temple Guardian. This boss is relatively easy in mechanics. However, it's a pretty drawn out fight and it's probably going to take you about 6 to 8 minutes to do. And it's going to drain quite a lot of the healer's mana as well as everyone's concentration. So the first thing you'll notice when you get into this room is that there's 2 bosses. The Temple Guardian and there's the Soulstone. Now, if you click on the Guardian, you'll notice that there's this buff, as you can see on screen, in which he has a buff where he can't take much damage. So what you need to do in this fight is you need to focus the Soulstone, you need to nuke it down as soon as possible, and then you'll be able to damage the main boss. So as soon as you shatter the Soulstone, you'll get a prompt on the screen telling you so, and you switch to the main boss and just nuke him as fast as possible. While you're doing this, he's going to regen the Soulstone, and it's going to come back to life, and you have to switch to the Soulstone and continue DPS again to break the Soulstone. So as far as main attacks go, there are 2. One is I'd say 100-degree frontal cone. which does a hell of a lot of damage. So for this reason alone, it's probably a good idea that you tank the boss facing a wall, just because the tank will be the only one who can get hit by it, and he can easily dodge it by stepping through the boss. And other than that, the boss is going to do a line attack, which you guys can see here, and this attack just does a lot of damage. One other thing that does happen is he's randomly going to target a player in the group, and he's going to run over to them and whack them. And when he does this, he's going to do loads of damage, and he's going to push them back against the wall, and he's going to stun them for a short amount of time. There's no way to avoid this as far as I know. You pretty much just got to man up and hope that it's not the healer too often so the tank doesn't die. So the final attack worth mentioning that's going to happen continuously throughout the fight, he's going to jump up in the air and do like a Mario ground pound. And when he does this, it's just the whole room will get hit of AoE. There's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to heal through it. As far as limit break goes, it's probably best to use a damage dealing limit break, either when you want to shatter the Soulstone or once it's shattered combined with cooldowns. As I said before, the fight's not too hard. It's just a case of being able to survive with the healer's mana and just concentrate for the 6 to 8 minute fight. So other than that, let's move on to the third boss. So on your journey from boss 2 to 3, you're going to notice that there's various optional rooms in which you may be able to go into. As you can see here, outside every massive door, there is a stone pedestal. Now at the start of the video, I talked about the Helm of Might and picking up the other 3 scattered across the dungeon. And when you do this, you'll notice that they have a small icon on them. All you need to do is you need to match up this icon with the one that you see on the pedestal. If you get it correct, it's just going to open the door and let you into all the loot. I believe there's a treasure chest inside each one. However, if you get it wrong, it's going to spawn up these ads called the Condemned. They're pretty easy to deal with, so just nuke them down and it will let you in anyway. Now, before we start the last boss, you're going to come to this kind of puzzle and you'll notice it from the very start of the instance. As you can see here on the left, this is the first thing that you saw when you came in, and it has a small pattern on it, which you guys now know is in relation to the artifacts that you picked up throughout the instance. So to open the door to the final boss, all you need to do is remember what you saw at the start, and you just need to enter it in on this tablet. So now onto the last boss, which is called the Adjudicator. This boss is pretty solid, and it's a good idea that everyone in the fight knows the tactics before you do it. So make sure that you tell the other people in your group what to do before you go in. First thing you're going to notice is on the floor, you have the familiar scene of the 3 golden squares. So in the first phase of the fight, which is about the first 1 or 2 minutes, 3 of the floating heads from the previous trash, they're going to spawn up separately, one at a time, every 30 seconds or so. What you need to do is, yet again, as you know, you need to drag these heads to the golden squares and you need to kill them. So the most effective way of getting the heads to the squares is to let the healer and the tank stand on the squares before any damage is done. Because of this, the healer's going to pick up aggro on the head, it's going to make its way over, the tank can grab it and he can tank it directly on the square, letting the DPS nuke it down until it's dead. So as this was our second attempt on the boss, we knew that 3 heads were going to spawn. So we decided prior to the fight in which order and which location we would kill the head. So in our tactic, we killed the first head on the left, the second one in the middle, and the third one on the right. So as the third head starts to spawn, you're going to notice that another element comes into the fight. We're going to call this phase 2, and that is in the form of these mithril verges. Now these keys, they're going to spawn up around the room, and about 5 to 10 seconds after activating, they are going to start doing laser beams across the room. Now if you get hit by these laser beams, they're going to do quite a lot of damage, and it's one of the things that you don't want to have to deal with later on in the fight. So as the bard, it was my job to run around and pretty much just get rid of these keys. As you guys can see here, I'm just running around nuking them. And in the meantime, the guys have dealt with the other third head, and they're just pretty much nuking the boss down as much as they possibly can. As the fight goes on, you're going to notice that more of these keys start to spawn, and they start to get a bit too much for me to deal with on my own. So the other DPS in the group, he started to help out. He covered the left side of the room, while I covered the right side of the room. Every so often, some weird looking keys are going to spawn, and they're going to have this massive black square around them, and they have a buff in which they can't take damage. So when these ones spawn, there's no need to DPS them, so you can go straight back to the boss. As the fight continues yet again, you'll notice that more keys are going to spawn up, and they're going to have this white box around them. These ones can be damaged, and you need to nuke them down as soon as possible. The reason for this is that they're not going to do the laser beam. Instead, they are going to do a massive AoE attack, which does about 25% damage to everyone in the room. So other than that, it's a case of just sticking with it, nuking the keys and doing as much damage as you possibly can on the boss. As far as limit breaks go, in this we used the Paladin's one because we were taking a hell of a lot of damage from the keys, and on the second attempt we managed to kill the boss. And that wraps up this video guide of the Sunken Temple of Qarn. So if you guys like this, then please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be covering so much content in Final Fantasy of Realm Reborn on this channel. If you have any questions or any suggestions, then please put them in the comments below, and I will reply to every single comment that is posted, because that's what I do. So guys, I'm going to get back to leveling. It's currently the first day, the release day of the game. I'm level 39, and I'm going to be grinding as fast as I possibly can to their max level, and I'm going to be making as many guides as possible. So guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. As you can see on screen, this is the small one, this is the medium one, and this is the large one. You probably noticed by the screenshots that there are kind of different style houses as well. Some are wood, some are marble, some are stone. And you can pretty much change all this at a later date once you've bought the house.